Welcome back to MHS Midnight Horror Stories. I know that many of you come to these videos as a gentle way to unwind before drifting off to sleep. So, before you close your eyes tonight, could I ask you for one small favor? Just leave me a quick interaction, a comment, a like, or maybe share where you're watching from and what time it is for you. Little actions like that help YouTube recognize the content and spread it to more people who might enjoy it. My current goal is to reach around 300 likes within the first 24 hours. Now then, let's step into tonight's chilling stories together. My name is Kevin, and I grew up in Aurora, Colorado during my teens. I liked basketball, my mom's pizza, and throwing the stick for our dog at the park. What I didn't like most people, was school. But I had my best friend Miles, who helped me get through every day there. He and I would catch the bus home together after school, and no matter how bad my day was, Miles always found a way to cheer me up. At least until the day he suddenly became the one who needed comforting. Miles was a good kid, never late for class, always turned in his homework, and generally stayed out of trouble. Then one day, as he was walking out of the boys' restroom, he accidentally bumped into a teacher named Mr. Harlan, spilling a whole cup of hot coffee all over the teacher's nice white shirt. Miles apologized, but Mr. Harlan went ballistic. Harlan acted like Miles did it on purpose and immediately sent him a referral, a punishment even worse than regular detention. Mr. Harlan later told the principal that Miles had intentionally spilled the hot drink on him. This made the incident serious. As a result, the principal wanted to expel him. His parents pleaded with the principal not to. Eventually, the punishment was reduced to 2 weeks of daily after-school detention, including 2 hours on Saturday morning. His parents believed Miles didn't mean it, but they advised him to stay quiet, accept the punishment, and just forget about it for the sake of a peaceful school life. However, Miles's older brother was not so easygoing. He was 3 years older than us and wanted revenge. Although Mr. Harlan had never given him trouble, he had hated the man since he was at the school. Seeing his little brother treated so unfairly made him furious. He promised that we would get back at Harlan, saying that revenge is a dish best served cold. At the time, I didn't understand what he meant. Miles's brother explained, if we rode our bikes to Harlan's house that very day and threw 24 rotten eggs at the house, he would know exactly who it was. But if we waited a few months, letting him think we were being good and remorseful, he wouldn't know who did it. Furthermore, Harlan would be even less likely to know who egged his house if we did it on a night when similar things often happened. That night was Halloween. Halloween is a night when everyone is in costume. Performing pranks would be harder to identify. The date was set for October 31st. Miles's brother chose this night for the revenge. Another reason he told us to be patient was so we could figure out a way to truly make Mr. Harlan hurt. Not physically hurt, but a way to get back at him for bullying Miles. It took him a few weeks to come up with the idea. One afternoon, he shared his plan. Harlan was extremely passionate about classic cars. He had invested a lot of money in an early model Jaguar E-Type and kept it locked up in his garage. That car was his pride and joy, and we were going to destroy it. We started planning in early October. We discussed options like slashing the leather seats or keying the body, making sure to minimize noise as much as possible. The plan's execution would begin with the help of Miles' brother's friend, Logan. Nearly every night for about 3 weeks, Logan would ride his bike to Harlan's house, knock loudly on the door, then jump on his bike and ride away. Logan reported back that Harlan was getting angrier and angrier. By Halloween night, Harlan was used to running down the street chasing Logan, yelling and threatening to beat him up. That would be the perfect time for us to break in. Everything was going according to plan. On the morning of October 31st, I was incredibly excited. We pretended we didn't have any plans. Later that day, Miles and I walked to the bus stop and reviewed the plan. His brother had meticulously arranged everything. A few hours later, all four of us were near Mr. Harlan's house. Miles's brother's friend stealthily walked his bike up to the front door. After banging on the door, he waited for Harlan to open it, then yelled, "Catch me if you can, you old idiot," and rode off furiously. Harlan went crazy. He yelled something we couldn't hear clearly, then ran to his everyday car and sped off to chase the friend. We were overjoyed. The plan had worked perfectly. We knew we only had about 15 minutes before he came back. We put on gloves and ran to the garage. Miles's brother took a towel from his bag, and Miles held it pressed against the window. His brother then quietly punched and broke the glass. We climbed inside. When the light was turned on, there was no car. We couldn't believe it. It was a rather large, empty space. All the planning for months had been for nothing. I suggested we should leave, but Miles's brother wouldn't accept it. He said there had to be something in the garage that we could break or take away to truly make Mr. Harlan suffer, and he wouldn't leave until we found it. Miles pointed to an old, military-style trunk with a padlock. I knew what he was thinking. Inside would be old military or naval stuff, precious mementos. Harlan would be devastated if anything like that was lost. Miles's brother found a rusty bolt cutter nearby, and he and Miles started cutting the lock. They opened the lid and began rummaging through it. I saw several white envelopes filled with handwritten letters. There were a few pieces of jewelry, which Miles quickly stuffed into his pocket. Then his brother pulled out a framed photo of a young woman and a small glass vial containing a few brown hair clippings. I thought the girl was Harlan's niece. As far as we knew, he had no family. Miles's brother immediately snatched the photo from Miles's hand. He stared at the photo with a look of astonishment, his face turning pale. Then he quickly tucked the vial with the hair clippings into his pants pocket, carefully wrapped the photo in his jacket, and ordered, "Get out of here, now." We froze for a few seconds, but then quickly followed. We climbed out the window and rode our bikes furiously. All three of us were silent the whole way. Miles's brother didn't say a word, just rode his bike very fast with a tense look on his face. Miles and I exchanged confused glances, not understanding what was happening. Finally, we stopped in front of the police station. Miles's brother got off his bike, carefully took out the photo and the vial with the hair clippings, and walked into the station. Miles and I looked at each other with utter astonishment. We couldn't believe what was happening. About 10 minutes later, 3 patrol cars left the station, speeding toward Harlan's house. We followed behind from a distance. On the way, Miles's brother finally told us what happened. He remembered the case of a young woman who went missing on the Flatirons near Boulder. The photo of the girl in Harlan's trunk was that of the missing girl. Everyone had just assumed she was dead, but her body hadn't been found. He was 100% sure it was the girl in the photo, and the hair clippings and jewelry could be hers. He had gone into the station, reported that he had found a crucial lead in the missing person case, and gave the evidence to the police. When we approached Harlan's house, police cars were parked out front. Officers were pounding on the door, but no one answered. They pounded harder, yelling Harlan's name, still silent. Finally, they broke down the door and rushed inside. We held our breath, waiting. A few minutes later, officers came out, communicating over their radios, one of them shaking his head. It seemed they hadn't found him. Maybe he had come home, saw the rummaged items, realized his plan was exposed, and fled. That was actually a theory I overheard from the police. A few days later, the whole school was abuzz with the news. Mr. Harlan had been arrested at the border with Mexico. When police investigated further, they discovered the horrifying truth. Harlan wasn't just a suspect in one missing person case. He was a serial killer. In his house were many more photos, hair clippings, and jewelry from at least 5 young women who had gone missing over the past 10 years. All of them were trophies he had kept. The news spread through the town like a storm. People couldn't believe that a respected teacher was such a monster. The victims' families finally got answers after years of suffering. Some bodies were found based on Harlan's confession. We never told anyone about our role in this case. Miles's brother filed the report anonymously, and the police didn't inquire further about the source of the tip. Maybe they were too busy with the Harlan investigation. We never discussed that Halloween night again, but all of us were aware that we had contributed to saving many lives. If Harlan's secret hadn't been exposed, he could have continued killing for many more years. For me, that was the first time I understood that sometimes the right thing comes from wrong actions. We broke in for revenge, but ended up bringing justice to innocent people. But also, because of an impulsive act, we came way too close to a killer. Fortunately, we survived to tell the story. That Halloween night changed our lives forever, not because of the revenge, but because we unknowingly played a role in ending a nightmare for so many families. I'm Laura, an elementary school teacher. I teach kids from about 7 to 11 years old. Teaching really is a special job. There are amazing moments that make you want to cry with happiness, but there are also terrible moments that haunt you for life. When you work with children, sometimes you witness miracles, but also tragedies that outsiders can hardly imagine. There are things you learn that will literally stick with you. At the beginning of that school year, a little boy named Ali Hassan transferred into my class. Ali was from a faraway country, didn't speak English, and was very awkward communicating at first. He studied extra hard. Just a few weeks later, he started to fit in. Ali's true personality slowly came out. He was a curious, happy, and friendly boy. Ali grew up in a very conservative culture where people were strongly against anything related to ghosts, witches, or the supernatural, and they did not celebrate Halloween. When September turned into October, the whole school started decorating for Halloween. Items like skeletons, vampires, spider webs, and so on appeared everywhere. The scale at which we celebrated this holiday made Ali quite scared. I explained to him that it was just pretend, that we were turning scary things into something fun. When he understood, Ali started to get interested. Luckily, his classmates were very kind. They welcomed Ali warmly and voluntarily taught him all about Halloween. Of all the creatures that typically appear during Halloween, Ali was especially fascinated by Dracula. I asked why, and he said he liked the idea of staying up late and being able to turn into a bat and fly. It was lovely to see Ali connect with his friends and overcome his fear like that. That year's Halloween fell on a Friday. In the afternoon after lunch, the class had a costume party. We wore masks, put on makeup, dressed up as monsters, and had a very fun Halloween celebration. Ali wore the plastic fangs I bought him and draped a black trash bag for a cape. All afternoon, he snuck up on his friends, jumped out and hissed like a vampire. The whole class laughed out loud, and once again Ali was a real joy to watch. When school ended, he insisted on walking home in his costume. At the time, I simply thought he loved the holiday too much, completely unaware that it would lead to a tragedy. By Monday morning, I was excited to see if Ali was still playing vampire, but he didn't come to class. The principal called the family. They said Ali was sick. The next morning, Ali still hadn't returned, so the principal called again to check in. Their English wasn't very good, but they tried to convey that Ali was still resting in bed and would be back soon. After Ali missed the entire week and the first 2 days of the following week, we started to worry. The principal called a third time and asked if they had taken Ali to the doctor. They said no, but the reason for this was vague. Social services got involved and things started to get serious. 2 weeks after Ali first missed school, a social worker visited the house. Ali's parents again said their son was sick. The social worker asked if she could come in and see Ali, but they refused. The social worker warned that she would come back with the police and they would be arrested if they interfered. But Ali's parents didn't react much. I'm not sure if they didn't understand or didn't believe what the social worker said. It took 3 weeks from Ali's absence for a team of professionals to finally gain access to the house. And the scene they saw inside was terrifying. Ali was lying in bed, just skin and bones. There were signs that the family had tried to care for him, but Ali was critically ill. The boy was taken to the hospital immediately. Doctors quickly discovered the reason. Ali had not been fed for almost 3 weeks, only given a little water, just enough to sustain life. This was a case of starvation. While Ali received medical care, the police arrested his parents. The officers described Ali's parents as kind, hardworking, and sincere people. They were very distressed to see their son so ill. However, when asked why they had let their child become so emaciated, they seemed confused, not understanding what the problem was. In their view, they had done exactly what a local holy man advised, to feed Ali as little as possible to starve the evil spirit that had possessed the boy's body. They fully believed their son was possessed because of Ali's fascination and special interest in vampires. By the 3rd week, when Ali started to become tragically thin, they even arranged for the holy man to perform an exorcism. But according to them, it didn't work, so the starvation regimen continued. They didn't take their son to the doctor. They didn't listen to the school. They only believed the person they considered holy. Hearing this whole story was the most horrifying and shocking experience of my career, and it still haunts me today. I ask myself, did I contribute to this tragedy? I introduced Ali to Halloween, encouraged him to explore scary things, thinking I was helping him fit in. But in the eyes of his parents, that was proof that their son was possessed by a demon. I didn't foresee the cultural difference, that what I thought would enrich a life could become a deep hole that swallowed an innocent child like that. Ali's parents eventually went to jail. Ali was moved to live with a foster family elsewhere. I never got to see little Ali again. Ali's parents loved their child, but they didn't believe in the natural curiosity of a child or the explanation from the school. Instead, they easily trusted the words of a stranger simply because that person claimed to be holy. They looked at their son with cultural fear. They didn't see a boy happily exploring a new world, but only the sign of a demon. Sometimes, love combined with ignorance can lead to devastating consequences.
I'm Danny, and I've hitched to my wife Michelle for almost 3 years now. My wife really wanted to get rich. We were not poor. Life wasn't overflowing, but we were not missing anything either. I work at a law office, and my wife worked in... I'm just trying to think of the right word to describe what Michelle did. Multi-industry, I think that word fits pretty well. My wife did all the jobs she thought can make some cash, instead of sticking to one field. After only a few months, my wife failed at all the jobs she did, fell into a state of depression. The family economy was supported by my salary. Are you tired, Michelle? I asked my wife at dinner. No way, Danny, I'm good, my wife said, with a kind of confused look. You can't carry all that financial weight on your own. Let me handle it, cool? I think it's time for us to have kids. You should find a chill job so you've got time to take care of the kiddos and yourself. My wife went quiet. I knew she still thought getting rich was the way to go. Then, one day, my wife dropped some shocking news on me. Danny, I just got back from the clinic, my wife said, sounding kind of hesitant and confused. My kidney, she said, and then she just started crying and fell apart. The doc said I need a kidney transplant, but I'm way at the bottom of this super long waiting list. Danny, I think I'll... No, Michelle, you're gonna be fine. Trust me. I'll get checked out, and if I can, I'll do whatever it takes for you. Can we go now? Michelle said, all excited as soon as I told her I'd be down to donate my kidney if it matched. Michelle took me to a rundown apartment building. Just thinking about how she couldn't afford to go to a decent clinic made me feel bad for her and blame myself even more. I asked my wife suspiciously about the clinic she mentioned. Michelle, you said the clinic is here? She didn't answer. And after we walked a bit more, I spotted an old sign with a red paint job. Dr. Cameron. Inside the clinic, the smell of cigarettes hit me hard. Not that bleach or medical supply smell I expected in a clinic or a hospital. A guy sitting in a swivel chair slowly got up and walked over to us, still holding a burning cigarette. You must be Danny, he said in a deep voice, breathing like he'd smoked 100 cigarettes at once. All right, let's see if your kidney is a match. Hold up. I need you to tell me about my wife's condition first, I said, a bit shocked. She doesn't have much time, the doctor frowned at me. Neither do I. My wife ran over and grabbed my hand, crying and begging me to listen to the doctor. Honestly, just going along with what Michelle wanted felt like the dumbest thing I ever did. Lying on that old hospital bed with the leg support about to snap in half made me too scared to even breathe. The doctor did some quick checks, like measuring my heart rate and blood pressure, but he didn't seem to care much. He dropped a line with the cigarette hanging from his lips. We can do the surgery right now. I jumped up and shouted, What? You haven't even done the test results for me and my wife. Before I knew it, a cold feeling hit my arm, and my whole body felt like it was falling apart. I managed to say a few more words, and then I officially passed out, straight into the devil's arms. I have no idea how long later, I woke up with this pain in my side, feeling like my body was split in two. The light was low, still stinking of cigarette smoke. I looked around and saw Michelle talking to the doctor. Wait, she was just standing there, looking healthy and whole right after the surgery? That's the highest price. His kidneys aren't the best quality, the doctor said, sounding pretty annoyed. Michelle, I whispered to my wife, and she turned around surprised. You're awake? What about you? You're the one who needs an urgent kidney transplant. My wife didn't say anything. Her face went from worried to totally indifferent, and then she looked at the doctor. A few seconds later, I felt that sharp pain in my neck shoot straight to my brain again. The second time I woke up, all I could see was darkness. The cigarette smoke smell was gone, and my back felt a lot softer. I raised my hand to touch my face and felt this thick layer of gauze wrapped around my eyes. My eye sockets were sore, and there was this weird feeling of emptiness. Where am I? What the hell is wrong with me? I exclaimed. The darkness, suffocation, and helplessness made me totally lose it. I heard hurried footsteps and felt someone's arm gripping mine tight. "Hello, mister. I'm Dr. Bradley. Now, relax." I stayed quiet, trying to take in what he was saying, silently praying that what I was thinking wasn't true. "You were brought to the hospital with blood loss, missing your left kidney and your eyes." I screamed, both in pain and in my head. Why was my love being stomped on like this? I yanked off the IV tubes and ripped the bandage off my eyes. It was all just a nightmare. If I could just take those off, I'd see everything again, and my body would be fine. But a bunch of arms held me down on the bed, and before I knew it, a syringe went into my arm, and I passed out again. The third time I woke up, I finally realized I was in the hospital, and I started to calm down. The police came to see me and said they got a call from one of my coworkers. He showed up at my place after I'd missed 2 days of work and found me lying on the floor, gasping for air. My mind was totally clear, and I remembered everything, especially that cold look my wife gave me. I just wanted to bolt out of there to find my cheating wife and that quack Cameron. But I couldn't. I was stuck there, feeling all the torment, regret, and despair, my heart crushed by betrayal. My wife and that bastard had sold my body parts.
So, this story I'm about to tell you, I've never forgotten it, even after all these years. I'm Erica, and this scary thing happened to me when I was 10. I was super scared of dogs, not the cute, fluffy ones you see on Instagram, more like pit bulls, labs, goldens, and dogs like that. They were huge and probably weighed like twice as much as me back then. I was just this skinny little girl. Their eyes were so intense it felt like they could see right through you. My fear wasn't something you could just laugh off. It was deep, paralyzing, so terrifying that it made my skin crawl and my body freeze up. Every time I saw a big dog, my breath would catch and my vision would go blurry. I just stood there, my knees shaking, praying it wouldn't come any closer. That night, I was supposed to have dinner at my best friend Kelly's place. I was planning to stay after dinner for a bit, like until 7 or 8. But Kelly and I were having so much fun, just caught up in cartoons and board games, that by the time I left, it was totally dark outside. The temperature had dropped a lot, and a cold wind was blowing through the quiet suburban street, making my skin crawl. Kelly's house was just one street over from mine, and there was a shortcut. It was this narrow alley with tall walls on both sides and wild bushes growing along the way. I'd walked this way 100 times before, but tonight, it just felt different. The darkness felt like it went on forever, swallowing up the warm light from the street lamps. I walked fast, my heart pounding, trying to ignore the fear creeping up in my chest. I should have listened to that feeling, should have turned back, should have taken the long way home under the familiar yellow light. But I didn't. I just kept walking, sinking deeper into the fear, telling myself I was probably just overthinking it. When I got to the middle of the alley, I heard footsteps behind me, heavy and steady. The guy in front of me was tall, really tall, like a shadow in the dark alley. The weak streetlight only lit up part of his face, but enough for me to see his pale, lifeless skin. He was wearing a black coat, all worn out, covering his body, with just his hands showing. His fingers were long and thin, like dry branches. His face was mostly covered by a hat, but I could still see his mouth. He was smiling, like a creepy grin, almost as if he was enjoying my fear. My stomach dropped, and I remember feeling like my legs were stuck to the ground, with every part of me screaming to run. In front of me was this tall figure, barely lit, getting closer with each step, and the sound was echoing off the walls of the narrow alley. Panic hit me. I tried to scream, but my throat was tight, and no sound would come out. I couldn't move. My whole body was shaking as the guy got closer, and his hand just barely touched my shoulder. I can still remember how cold his fingers felt, and and how my skin just prickled with pure fear. It's dangerous to be out here alone at night, little girl. You'll run into pervs, kidnappers, like me. He laughed, loud and creepy. My legs went weak, and I just started crying, my heart hurting so bad. I felt like I was facing a monster, not a person. My whole body was shaking. My limbs felt numb, but I couldn't look away from him. The creep grabbed both my hands and yanked me closer to him. Before I could even react, he leaned in close to my ear, gritted his teeth, and told me if I still wanted to go home, I couldn't make a sound. A 10-year-old girl back then could only bite her lips and nod, trying to be quiet. Then I heard a loud roar, like it came from deep inside. I looked around to see where the sound came from, and there they were. 2 big dogs right at the entrance of the alley. They were feral dogs, fur all messy, ribs showing under their skin. I was facing 2 horrors at once, and it felt like my mind and heart were going to explode from all the pressure. The dogs' eyes were locked on me and the guy, their lips pulled back, showing off sharp, shiny teeth. Did they think their territory was being invaded or something? They moved fast, and before I knew it, they were on the guy. He screamed, this high-pitched, freaked-out scream, and started backing away, trying to shove them off. The dogs wouldn't back off, biting and growling, and their growls just got scarier in the alley. I saw my chance. My body finally moved, and I took off running. I ran faster than I ever had, not stopping until I got to my front door. My hands were shaking so bad, it took me 3 tries to turn the doorknob. The rest was just a blur, the rushed voices of my parents, the police, the ambulance. I remember sitting in the hospital, a blanket around my shoulders, still too stunned to talk. My parents told me the dogs chased the guy off, and they probably saved my life. The creep was badly hurt, with deep bites, some of them in pretty bad spots. He was getting treated and would have to go to court, facing the right sentence once he healed up. According to my parents, they'd been feeding the dogs for the past few months. So those dogs protected me, not because they were feral or dangerous, but because they were grateful, smart, and brave. That night changed everything for me. Even though I was still scared, I couldn't deny that deep down I felt thankful and loved them. My quiet little heroes who showed up just in time to save me.
My name is Ethan. I live alone in a small town in the southern United States. My work takes up a lot of time in a day. I have to leave the house at 8 a.m. and return at 7 p.m. The area around my house was quite empty until the last few months. A family of a young couple and their daughter moved in. They weren't very friendly, so I only greeted them briefly in some first meetings. When I came home from work in the evening, I saw a little girl sitting on the side of the road wearing thin clothes in the cold winter. After a few questions, I realized that the girl was the child of a young couple next door. The girl was about 5 years old, shivering, her eyes fixated on the ground. When she heard me ask, she just looked up, looked at me with innocent, puffy eyes, and did not answer. I was about to help her stand up, but suddenly her mother's scolding sound came from afar. She is Kate, about 35 years old, with a thin body and some bruises on her face. I greeted Kate in a friendly manner, but she ignored me. She roughly pulled her daughter into the house and scolded her repeatedly, causing her to cry in fear. That night while I was sleeping, the sound of the couple arguing and a loud cry of the neighbor's daughter woke me up. This wasn't the first night like that. Since they moved in, I was often bothered by loud arguments. I'm quite uncomfortable. It's been a long day of work, so I really want to rest. But it's a private matter of their family, so I'm not feeling comfortable about reminding them and instead choose to keep quiet. The frequency of the couple's arguments is increasing. They use harsh words and insult each other. Sometimes there is a mother's yelling at her daughter, followed by her loud crying. I feel sorry for her when she has to live in such an environment. A few days later, that house felt strangely quiet. They must have resolved their conflicts, I thought. Another evening, I came home later than usual. On the dirt road leading to the house, I saw Kate's daughter again. This time she dressed more warmly. The little girl no longer sat with her head down, holding a toy shovel and diligently digging down the dirt road. I approached her and gently asked her what she was doing here. Her face was much brighter. Her innocent voice answered me, "I dig graves to bury people." That innocent voice told me that I was following my mother's actions the previous evening. I looked towards the neighbor's house in fear. Kate's figure standing in the door startled me. Her eyes were sharp and a bit angry. Kate slowly approached, pulled her daughter's hand, and went into the house without saying a word. Early the next morning, I heard loud crying and a very strong banging on the door. Hurrying to open the door, I saw a little girl with messy hair and disheveled clothes crying loudly while pointing towards her house. A series of questions arose in my mind. Walking towards the house, I immediately felt a cold chill run down my spine. In the house's messy living room, Kate hanged herself, her body floating, her face pale. I felt like my body was frozen shut, so scared that I couldn't move. My mind went all blank, my ears were ringing. The girl's cry pulled me back to reality. Immediately, I smelled a terrible stench. Taking the girl back to my house, I quickly called the police. After investigation, the police concluded that Kate's death was due to her hanging herself. Even more horrifying, they discovered Kate's husband's body buried behind the garden. The body was determined to have been dead for about 5 days and was decomposing. Kate herself attacked and murdered her husband, and then she ended her own life. Kate's daughter fell asleep in my arms because she was tired. Looking at the poor girl, I felt sorry for her unhappy childhood and having to witness so many terrible things. The girl was taken to live with her aunt in rural California, 300 kilometers from her old home. I think her parents' married life is not happy. The bruises on Kate's body are most likely caused by her husband's violence. Kate only acted spontaneously when she murdered her husband, due to the life of too much pain and repression she had endured in the past.
Ken, my best friend from university, is a guy that everyone admires. He has a striking appearance, a well-proportioned body, neatly trimmed blonde hair, and captivating deep brown eyes. Ken always dresses neatly, with his shirts always perfectly pressed, a flawless, elegant appearance of a young man from a wealthy family. It's not hard to spot Ken in the crowd, as he has a bright, promising presence that makes it impossible for others not to notice him. With outstanding academic achievements since he was young, Ken is someone everyone believes will have a brilliant future. But there is one thing about Ken that many people can't quite understand. He's very quiet and a little shy. Ken doesn't like large gatherings and never casually chats with his classmates. He often sits alone, quietly observing others as if he is lost in a different world. Ken and I have known each other since the first day of university, when we were both assigned to the same group. At first, Ken was very distant, but over time, we became closer. I tried to open up and bring him into my world. Although Ken gradually became more comfortable, he still maintained his calm, quiet demeanor. In the third year of university, Ken began to show some strange behavior. At first, Ken's usual neatness gradually disappeared. His hair was no longer as tidy as before, messy, as if it hadn't been trimmed in days. The perfectly pressed shirts were now wrinkled, with intentional stains, in the form of drawings and crude phrases.
Ken became disheveled, absent-minded, and exhausted, his appearance unrecognizable as the bright young man everyone once knew. The change didn't stop at his appearance. Ken became increasingly obsessed with the attention of others. Ken started to act differently, trying to be close and friendly with everyone, something he had never done before. Ken took the initiative to join conversations, trying to blend in with other group gatherings. He smiled more often, but the smile didn't carry true happiness. It was like an effort, a forced attempt to make himself accepted. This forced friendliness didn't last long and quickly turned into even strange behavior. Ken wanted to attract more attention from the crowd in a stronger way. I remember the first time when he suddenly stood up in the middle of class while the teacher was lecturing and began speaking loudly about a great plan of his. He said that he would become the inventor of time-traveling machines and make humans immortal. The whole class laughed, amused by Ken's unusual behavior, while the teacher frowned and reminded him. Not stopping there, Ken gradually began to do even more bizarre actions in every situation with the crowd. He would suddenly stand on a chair in the middle of the school cafeteria, shouting loudly about his absurd plans. A few times, he shouted incomprehensible slogans while everyone was quietly studying. I could see the desperation in Ken's eyes as he tried to attract attention, a longing that bordered on obsession. He wanted everyone to look at him, to be the center of attention, even if it meant Ken had to become strange, even bizarre. Ken's change left me confused and questioning. When I first noticed the change in his appearance, I wondered if it was due to academic pressure or some difficulties he wasn't talking about. But as time went on, this change made me feel more and more worried and uncertain about Ken's true personality. I tried to get closer to Ken, to understand him better, but I knew Ken wanted more than that. A seed of horror was cultivated by Ken in his own soul since he was a child. Ken's strange behavior was the final threshold before the tree of that seed from the past bore fruit. It was an evening that seemed ordinary. I sat in my dorm room, books spread out in front of me, but my mind was drifting somewhere else, trying to focus but failing. At that moment, my phone rang. A message came from a mutual friend of mine and Ken. Just a few short lines, but enough to leave me stunned. Ken went to the police station and confessed. He killed his mother. My hands trembled. My eyes couldn't leave the phone screen, and the words seemed to dance before my eyes. I read the message once, then again, but I couldn't believe what I was reading. My mind went blank. Time seemed to stop, and all that was left was panic. My heart began to race, and my body went stiff. A cold sensation spread from my chest, as if an ice block was pressing heavily on my heart. Ken, my best friend, is a murderer? No, this can't be true. Ken went to the police station, standing in front of the officers, dressed in a neat outfit, a spotless white shirt, black trousers, and shiny leather shoes. Ken's hair was carefully combed, and his face showed no emotion, as if everything that had happened was of no importance. He spoke loudly and confidently, outlining his plan and the crime he had committed. The police began their investigation and slowly uncovered the tragic yet condemnable story of Ken's mother. They discovered that Ken had lived under the twisted and cruel upbringing of his mother. Ken was expected to become a perfect gem, flawless and without a single blemish, by his ambitious mother. But she didn't use a scientific approach to parenting, combined with the love of a mother to raise Ken. All the frustrations and resentment from the darker side of a seemingly perfect family, she poured them onto Ken. His impressive appearance and outstanding academic achievements were the mask she created to cover up her own cruelty. Every action, every thought, every moment of Ken's life had to be under his mother's surveillance. He lived with his physical functions, but his emotions were controlled and permitted by his mother. The price for that perfection was that Ken's childhood and soul were distorted, forced into a mold with no way out. Ken endured that torment in silence, never daring to speak out. He just wanted freedom, to escape the controlled life, and chose to end it all. The utter helplessness and despair were expressed through the 13 knife wounds Ken left on his mother's body. When I learned about Ken's past, I felt an endless sorrow, a deep regret for my friend. I can't forget the look in Ken's eyes as he was led away by the police. Empty, soulless eyes, but with something that seemed like a sense of relief. It was as if he had finally escaped that nightmare, even though the price he had to pay was too great.
The pressure from an environment lacking love and understanding can cause deep wounds, leading a person to lose themselves, and sometimes the only form of release comes from the most brutal actions. I'm Devlin, 43 years old, and I currently work as a mechanic at a large auto repair shop in the city center. My wife, Adela, is 40 years old and works as a full-time homemaker. We have 3 children, 1 son and 2 daughters, and there's a pretty significant age gap between them. My oldest son, Joyce, is 19 years old and is currently studying marketing at university. My twin daughters, Agatha and Alita, are not yet 5 years old. Since Joyce started university, our family only has all members together for 3 full months each year, which is during his summer break. Joyce loves his younger sisters a lot. I often joke with my wife that it's as if Agatha and Alita have 2 dads. One morning, Joyce came home with 2 large suitcases. My wife and I were very surprised because he was supposed to be in school. Joyce explained that the school switched to online classes because many of the classrooms needed repairs. My wife and I welcomed our son home with joy. Needless to say, Agatha and Alida were overjoyed to see their big brother return and stay home for an extended period. I noticed that Joyce didn't look as cheerful as he usually does when he comes home, and he had lost quite a bit of weight. Both my wife and I assumed it was due to academic pressure. Joyce put his things in his room and seriously emphasized that no one was allowed to enter or even come near the door. I need a quiet space to study, and I hope everyone will cooperate. My wife and I agreed, though Agatha and Alida seemed a bit sad and pouty. Joyce increasingly seemed to be turning into a completely different person. He became withdrawn and distant from everyone, indifferent to the affectionate gestures from his sisters. Most of the time, Joyce stayed in his room. I tried to take some time in the evenings to talk with him, but Joyce would only respond with a cold, piercing stare. My wife discussed the idea of taking Joyce to see a therapist when I brought up the topic with my son during dinner. Immediately, Joyce slammed his plate onto the floor and yelled loudly, "I'm fine! I'm perfectly okay!" At Joyce's outburst, Agatha and Alita started crying and clung tightly to their mother. My wife and I were both utterly stunned. Joyce went up to his room, and my wife and I took turns comforting our 2 little princesses. When the 2 girls had fallen asleep, my wife began to cry. My wife showed me a large bruise on her side and right upper arm. Joyce threw things at me when I tried to enter his room to talk to him. I held my wife, not knowing what to say to her. Is this really our warm and gentle boy, Joyce? In the days that followed, our family was always in a state of tension and heaviness. My wife and I temporarily went along with Joyce's wishes, allowing him to speak first instead of making demands or asking too many questions. After 10 days of being home, Joyce finally agreed to go outside for the first time. He didn't tell us where he was going. "I'll be back home before dinner." Joyce said this as he left without even looking at us. That day, with my wife having a fever, I took on the household chores and looked after our 2 little daughters to help her out. I decided to tidy up Joyce's room a bit. He never developed a habit of being tidy since he was little, so I felt I had to do this. As I expected, Joyce's room was cluttered with clothes, decorations, toys, and even a few cans of meat, something Joyce has always disliked. As I ventured further into the room, a foul odor overwhelmed me, making me feel lightheaded. Could it be the smell of leftover food? No, it smelled like rotting raw meat. Muttering to myself, I searched around the room and then pinpointed the source of the odor. It was coming from the area around the bed. I bent down and found a small sack underneath, with a thin brown liquid oozing out. Surrounding it were countless maggots fighting for territory. I pulled out the sack and looked inside. "Bella!" I screamed loudly when I realized it was the neighbor's cat, with its distinctive white fur. Its fur and flesh were mixed together and almost completely decomposed, exposing the skeleton. A crucifix was stabbed through the poor animal's neck. I walked around Joyce's room, carefully inspecting everything once more. Using all my strength to pull the bed, I was stunned to find an inverted iron crucifix placed between two candle holders. Most horrifying of all, there was a picture of my youngest daughter, Elida, stuck to the crucifix. "Darling!" My wife's voice called out from downstairs, startling me. I quickly closed Joyce's room door and ran downstairs. "You have a phone call. They've called several times already." Grabbing the phone from my wife's hand, I tried to speak in the calmest tone possible. "Hello, this is Devlin speaking." "Yes, Mr. Devlin, this is from the administration office of UT Austin. I'm calling to inform the family about the suspension of your son Joyce's program. Because Joyce changed one of the numbers on your account. That's why we're only able to contact you now." I listened to the phone call, my eyes wide with shock as I looked at my wife. She anxiously ran over and kept asking me what had happened. I suggested she stay calm and listen to the whole situation. I also shared my concerns and suspicions with her. Joyce might be involved in some sort of cult. Joyce broke down and started crying. I quickly took my wife and our two little daughters to my mother-in-law's house to get away for a while. At nearly 7 p.m., Joyce returned home carrying a stuffed bear, claiming it was a gift for Elida. "You need to explain to me about your suspension, Joyce." At my words, Joyce's face turned extremely displeased. "And about the neighbor's cat Bella, the inverted crucifixes, and the photo of Elida as well." Joyce's expression shifted from irritation to surprise, then to shock. He rushed up to his room and I followed, calling his name and demanding that he explain everything. Joyce stood in the middle of the room, yelling out in apparent pain and desperation. It was a sacrifice. The cat, Elida, and even Agatha, all of it. I was stunned, looking at my son whose familiar face now seemed utterly unfamiliar. Joyce appeared to go berserk, smashing everything in the room. I ran downstairs to the living room and quickly called the police. Helplessly watching my child being handcuffed and taken away, I cried. Fortunately, my wife and two little daughters were safe. My wife and I explored every possible avenue, from scientific to spiritual, to help Joyce. He still has a future ahead of him. After 2 years of persistent effort, Joyce was able to reintegrate into life. He decided to pursue a trade and work with me at the garage. My wife and I cherish the moments when our family is together and have learned the importance of guiding and paying closer attention to our children. I'm Dylan, I'm 10, and I'm the youngest of 4 brothers. Last summer, my family moved into a vacation home in Staunton, this little town in central Illinois. My family was going to be here for about 2 weeks before my brothers and I head back to school and wrap up our vacation. Our house is at the end of the road into town. It's not so big, but it's got enough space for the 6 of us. Next to the house, there's this little path that goes to a big cornfield full of dry, deep yellow corn cobs. Under the corn plants, there are some wild, empty spots where the sunlight barely gets through, so it's all dark down there. Every now and then, a light breeze comes through, making the cornfield sway a little and giving off this rustling sound, kind of like a whisper from the shadows. This whole scene, even though it's simple and pretty, had this weird pull that got me and my 4 brothers excited. We'd always invite each other to the cornfield to play hide and seek. Since I'm the youngest in the family, my brothers were always messing with me the most when we played. Tyler was the oldest, always bossing everyone around, and he knew exactly how to get us to do what he wanted. Connor was easygoing, always going along with all the pranks Tyler and I came up with. Parker, the middle brother between Connor and me, always tried to act all grown up, never admitting if he was scared, even though no one really knew if he was or not. We hopped over the low wooden fence and ran right into the cornfield. The corn plants were tall, stretching out their leaves like big, thick arms. I could feel the breath of the earth and trees around me, like I was totally surrounded. When the game started, I was the first one to find the others. I was excited, but also worried about the pranks they could pull at any moment. The cornfield was very wide, and the leaves blocked my view. I thought to myself, if someone ran past, they'd totally disappear in the next second. While I was searching, I heard some loud, heavy breathing, which meant one of my brothers was hiding really close by. I walked really quietly, each step sinking into the soft soil, gently moving the leaves and shouting loud, trying to scare someone, but there was no one there. I took a deep breath, ready to keep searching. But for some reason, the air around me suddenly felt really thick and hard to breathe. The corn plants seemed taller and thicker, starting to cover the sky and making everything feel darker, even though it was still light out. I started to lose my patience, pushing hard with my hand and breaking some corn stalks at the same time. Because of that, I saw someone standing in the distance. I tried to keep my excitement in check. It was definitely one of my 3 brothers. I quickly ran toward the figure, but then all 3 of my brothers suddenly yelled, and I froze. My brothers called that the game was over, and our parents told us to come back for dinner. They seemed pretty mad when they found out we'd snuck into the cornfield. I turned around to look at the shadow from earlier, but the person was gone. Hearing my brothers calling louder and more urgently, I quickly left. After dinner, I asked my brothers if anyone had seen a tall person in the cornfield, and they all said no. I didn't buy it because they'd messed with me so many times before, so I asked again, and they still said no. The next day, my brothers invited me to play hide and seek again, and I totally agreed, of course. I was the one who had to search. I couldn't forget that weird feeling when I saw the shadow in the cornfield. When I got ready to search for the second time, I couldn't focus on finding my brothers. All I could think about was the shadow that passed by the day before. I walked deeper into the field, right where I remembered seeing that person. The sunlight started to fade, and the space around me got even more blurry. The wind blew through the corn rows, making this creepy rustling sound. Suddenly, I heard footsteps crunching on the dry leaves, making this loud, clear, and echoing sound. I turned toward the sound and called out Connor's name, and all I got was a giggle, but I was sure it wasn't Connor. The laugh was really deep and loud. "Can I play with you guys?" Log's same deep voice, then this crazy, uncontrollable laugh. My heart was pounding, my legs were shaking, and I couldn't move. My eyes were wide, staring at the swaying corn plants as a tall figure moved through them. And then, a guy showed up in front of me. He was so tall, way taller than anyone I'd ever met. He was built big, with muscles that looked like he'd been working out for years. His face had this fierce look, like it was full of anger and hostility. His features were pretty rough, sharp chin, high nose, and his brown eyes were deep, full of malice. His skin was pale, like he hadn't seen sunlight in forever. But what gave me the most chills was his smile. That smile was twisted, weird, and very mocking. A chill ran down my spine. I couldn't move, couldn't say a word, just standing there, frozen, like my limbs were stuck. The fear started in the soles of my feet and spread all through my body. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I was breathing heavy, wheezing like there was no air left in my lungs. It felt like the whole world just stopped, leaving only that guy and me, a 10-year-old kid. Dylan! My name echoed in the air, like a scream cutting through the silence of the cornfield. Connor's voice was like a lifeline, pulling me out of the fear. Dylan! The call came again, louder and more familiar. I screamed as loud as I couldn't handle the fear inside me for another second. I freaked out, running toward Connor's voice, my feet barely touching the ground. Everything around me was a blur, like some nightmare. I don't even remember when I ran into the house. I locked the door, ignoring my brother's and parents' calls. My chest felt heavy, and I was breathing fast. After that, I couldn't talk or act normal anymore. I just found myself stuck in nightmares, where that weird guy was still standing there, his mocking smile haunting me every night. My parents, worried about how I was doing, decided to cut the vacation short, head back to the city, and take me to the hospital. Once I was feeling better, I told my parents everything. They looked at me, worried, and all my brothers and I got lectured for not listening. After that, I never went back to that vacation house again. Even though time passed and everything started to calm down, that fear and the image of that guy still wouldn't leave me.
On Halloween night 3 years ago, I got teased in a weird way. I'm Grace, and my family's just my parents and my twin brothers. It was Halloween night. I got back from my best friend's place, and the house was totally empty. There was a note from my mom on the dining table. "We will be at Mr. White's party, and we'll be back late. Handle dinner yourself. Do whatever you want. Go trick-or-treating with your brothers, or maybe come to the party with us." After reading my mom's ideas for a fun Halloween, I decided to just stay home. I wasn't into Halloween. No clue why. Was anyone else like that? I locked the door, hung the key in the usual spot, and went to my room to change. As I was buttoning my PJs, I noticed another note on my desk. "Someone's in the house." I frowned and let out a tired sigh. "Leon, Logan, are you two messing around again?" I was pretty sure about it, since I was no stranger to my two little brothers' pranks. I told them, "If you two even touch my stuff, you're dead for sure," while I threw a little boxing move to warn them. Then I crumpled up the note, tossed it in the trash, and headed downstairs to make dinner. When I opened the cupboard to grab some veggies and bacon for a salad, I found another note stuck in there. I read it in a sarcastic tone like, "It's just you and me here. Enough, you two. This isn't funny at all. Come out here before I really lose my patience." All I got in response to my annoyance was silence. "You two brats," I muttered as I walked toward the door, knowing they must have snuck back into the house again. When I turned the doorknob, it was still locked. I turned back to where the key was hanging, but it was gone. I almost missed another note that was stuck on the door. "You can't run." "Leon, Logan, I'm saying it for the last time. Get out here now," I yelled, really mad at those two kids as I kicked the door hard. I ran into the living room, and the bag with my phone was gone too. "What the heck is this?" I said, feeling annoyed, helpless, and a bit confused. "Look at the ceiling." The note on the table made me shake. and my heart was racing. I took a deep breath, looked up slowly, and then just screamed. On the ceiling was Nana, my cat, with a knife stuck in her chest, like she was nailed up there. "Leon! Logan!" I burst into tears and ran upstairs screaming. I ran to the landline, crying and praying, and quickly dialed my mom's number. But it was quiet. The phone line was cut, and I was trapped in my own house. Oh my God, please tell me this is just a prank. I was seriously scared and panicking. I dashed into my little sibling's room, hoping to find something, but it was all quiet. I cried even louder. I ran back to my room and locked the door tight. In a situation like this, I gotta stay really calm, I muttered to myself, my hands ready to rip my hair out. My heart skipped a beat when I spotted another note on the table in the distance. "You're exactly where I want you." I covered my mouth, trying not to cry out loud, and everything started to blur in front of me. I looked around the room and then spotted the laptop. I grabbed it quick and shot a message to my best friend. "This is serious. I'm not joking. Call police ASAP. Someone broke into my house." All I could do was hide in the corner, crying and praying like crazy. About 10 minutes later, I heard the police sirens and jumped up, rushing downstairs. I was crying and going on about all the awful stuff I'd just been through. My parents and little brothers got home about 20 minutes later. After almost an hour of checking every nook and cranny of the house, the police still couldn't find anything weird. "Grace, behind you," Mom shouted in a panic. I was so close. "Trick or treat." That was what the note stuck to my back said. It had been almost 2 weeks since Halloween, but I still couldn't shake off the creepy vibe from that night. I had to skip school to see a shrink with my mom, and I needed someone with me the whole time. I couldn't skip school anymore, so my parents and little brothers really tried to cheer me up. Going back to school after almost a month, I was super tired, and my face looked all worn out. On top of that, I got hit with a bunch of bad news. Lucy, my best friend, was taking over my cheerleading captain spot. Devlin, my boyfriend, also said goodbye and started hanging out with Lucy. Under the desk, there was another note that said, "You're now in a situation I wanted." Now I got what Lucy's smile meant that morning.
you.